Okay, hello everyone. My name is Hallie Mitchell and I'm the Manager of Training for Canucks Autism Network. The webinar that I'm going to be presenting today is called Supporting Positive Behavior in Recreation Settings. It's going to be about 1 hour, and we'll start with a little bit about sort of who I am and an introduction to Canucks Autism Network, and then I'll jump into showing you a little bit about the agenda for this webinar. So as I said, my name is Hallie Mitchell. I'm the Manager of Training at Canucks Autism Network. I've been here about 5 years. The organization has been around for 10 years, so I have a bit of history there. I just want to thank you for your time today, for listening to this webinar, and I want to encourage you, if you have any questions, to feel free to get in touch with us as an organization. We can be found at canucksautism.ca, or if you'd like to email me specifically, that can be training@canucksautism.ca. Okay. So the vision for this webinar, for the webinar series, is really to create judgment-free spaces for community members with autism to really support individuals with autism to begin accessing community recreation in their own communities, help families to really feel welcome in those spaces, and very largely and importantly as well, we really want staff and volunteers in recreation spaces to feel really confident supporting individuals with diverse abilities in those programs. So that is the purpose of this webinar. I'm going to tell you a little bit about us as an organization and what we do, so you have some background. And then we'll begin to discuss why community recreation is so important for individuals with autism. And the focus of today's webinar is really going to be on practical support strategies that you can use in context to really increase positive behavior, motivation, enhance your communication, and increase predictability and structure in recreation settings for individuals with autism and other individuals as well. So I'll just jump into chatting a little bit about our organization. Our mission as an organization is to provide year-round sports and recreation programs. So we do that. We have about 500 programs in British Columbia per year. We employ close to 1,000 staff and volunteers per year. And we have about 8,500 members in BC. So if you're looking to refer people to Canucks Autism Network, if you've met some families that you think could benefit from our programs, it might be important to tell them that it's only $25 a year to join, and a lot of our programs are either highly subsidized or free to access. We have a really high support ratio, so we're often able to provide 2-to-1, 3-to-1, or even 4-to-1 support if that is what someone needs to be successful in our programs. And it also comes with some other benefits as well that you can learn a little bit more about on the website. There's just a little background there about our programs. We also do a lot of training for a whole bunch of different sectors, so including recreation, sport, community spaces, first responders, and schools. So webinars are one part of what we do, but we do a lot of live training workshops. We have some online modules. So if you are looking to connect with someone else who's interested in receiving some training, feel free to direct them to us and we'd be happy to help. Our vision as an organization is really just that every individual with autism is understood, accepted, and supported in all community spaces. And we believe training is a great way to achieve that means, to sort of increase education, build confidence and skills to support individuals with autism and build awareness in communities across BC. All right, so chat a little bit about autism and community recreation and why it is so important. So what do we already know about community recreation and individuals with autism? We already know that individuals with autism are less likely to participate in recreation than their peers are, that because of that, they're probably going to be less active both in their childhood and also into their youth and young adult years. There's less likelihood that they're going to be active for life as some of their peers might be. and they're more likely to actually become obese than their peers. And if we know that individuals with autism may be more likely to develop physical literacy skills at a slower rate than their peers already, then sort of missing out on this opportunity to participate in community recreation can also be a contributing factor to not developing those physical literacy skills as fast as their peers, which is really important because we know that these physical literacy skills aren't just important in and of themselves. They really create opportunities for other things in life. So if you can run, then you can maybe, play tag with your friends at recess. If you can run, maybe you can play with your family on vacation in the forest. If you can throw, maybe you can join a team in your community with something that you're interested in and feel like a member of that team. If you swim, maybe your family feels really safe going on vacation. So physical literacy skills aren't just important because they're physical literacy skills. They're important because they open up lots of opportunities for us to have meaningful participation in our community, to feel like we're active members of our community, and really to set that foundation for being active for life. So we really believe that sort of by creating capacity in recreation settings, by training staff and volunteers, we're really helping not just to, build the confidence in those staff and volunteers, but we are also really helping to sort of build this community that is really safe and welcoming, where families, individuals with autism can build their physical literacy skills. They can have an active social environment to hang out in, to learn in, to build friendships in. They can feel included in their community, they can feel welcome in their community, and really that builds a foundation for a really active future, whether it's in, sports in their community, whether it's in their recreation center with their family, whether it's, opportunities to participate with their family and friends in their lives, opens up so many opportunities. So this is something that we believe as an organization is really important, is that that there are opportunities in community recreation for individuals with autism to really feel safe, welcome, supported as much as possible. And we really believe training is a great way to do that. A lot of recreation centers come to us and they say, we really want to be inclusive. Of course, this is our goal. This is what we're striving towards, and we're just not sure where to start. So training is one really great way that we can increase the confidence and the skills of recreation leaders, instructors, those awesome young leaders who are going to be supporting children in summer camps and in skating programs and in swimming programs in their community, to feel really, really great about including everyone in their group and being able to really support everyone in their group. So with that sort of introduction said, that's kind of what today is about. We're really trying to, and this is something we do a lot as an organization, we really try to provide some sort of concrete, practical skills that instructors can implement right away in their programs. So they're really sort of tangible things that are easy to implement. So yeah, they're based on kind of universal design principles, they're research-based, what else to say about that? You don't need to know someone has a diagnosis of autism in order to use them. We really encourage recreation instructors to use these strategies across the board for all kinds of groups, because they are strategies that are going to really increase positive behavior and participation, motivation, and hopefully enjoyment of the whole experience for not just someone with a disability or a diagnosis, but actually anyone, hopefully. All right, so with that said, we're going to sort of jump into some support strategies. So it's broken down into sort of 3 different sections. We have motivation being the first one, communication, and increasing predictability and structure. So we're going to start with motivation, and these are strategies that we can use to sort of increase engagement and positive behavior in programs when individuals might not be necessarily always show up motivated to do the activities for that day, and how can we really make it fun for them, make it really engaging for them. So just kind of an overview of all the strategies we're going to talk about today. They're meant to be used flexibly. So we may not use all of these strategies in every program. It may be, considered more as kind of like building a toolbox of skills that we can use, that we can pull out along the way, and that we can adapt and modify for the needs of the group that's in front of us or the needs of the individual that's in front of us. And we also really like to encourage recreation instructors that parents are really an awesome resource for them, that parents know their children really well, and they've, probably have worked with a lot of professionals over the years, and they have some really great strategies that they know already are really important and helpful for supporting their child. And those are things that, if you can kind of bring into your own program, into your own practice, then it's probably going to be something that's going to be work to really support that child really well. All right, so motivation. So as I was, kind of alluding to, even when you really love a certain program, you really are into recreation, you're really, let's say you have a kid who's really motivated to skate and loves skating and thinks it's just the most fun thing in the world. That's awesome. That kid who even loves skating may not always show up to every single skating lesson feeling motivated to skate that day. Our motivation changes based on, how much we've slept, how hungry we are, things that are happening in our personal life, what happened before the program, who's in the program, how much we connect with our instructor. And that's even considering someone who maybe really loves skating to begin with, right? Some people may show up and they just say, we have often kids who show up and they just say, you know what, I really don't like skating and I didn't want to come here and my parents made me come here. So, when we have a group in front of us, it's very likely that not everyone is always going to be motivated to participate, and that's normal, that's a part of life. So we really believe that motivation strategies are super important. They're something that's really going to help you to engage and make activities fun for groups on days when maybe they just don't feel particularly motivated to participate. So we're going to go through kind of 4 key tips. Because we only have an hour together, this content is very condensed. So often we sort of have a lot more strategies that we would cover, but we're going to kind of boil it down and really just quickly go through a couple of key strategies in each section. And if you're really interested in getting more information about any of these strategies, again, you're welcome to access any of the training that we have, live training workshops from our website, or we have some really great other online training modules that you are welcome to access as well. And if you need more information, you can just email training@canucksautism.ca. Okay, so we'll just jump right in. The first one is about rapport. I think often we sort of show up to programs and we really, we have a list of things we want to accomplish, and sometimes we feel really tempted to just sort of jump into those things. We really believe that it's important before starting anything, before asking a lot of the participants that we have in our programs, what we really want to encourage recreation instructors to do is to build a relationship, build the trust, become that really fun, awesome person who uses lots of praise, who they really feel motivated to work for. If you can think of situations in your life where you felt really motivated to participate and motivated to be engaged or try your best, it was probably for someone who you felt really connected with. So some recommendations that we provide to recreation instructors are things like try to find out what the group really likes. So think about what their age is, what things they're really interested in. And if you can find a common interest with them or share in one of their interests, or take one of their interests and make the activity that you are going to do as a group about that interest, then you're going to get a lot more engagement. So, for example, let's say you're working with a group of young children, they're really interested in, a lot of them have seen the movie, Paw Patrol, let's say. So you're like, oh, that's cool, Paw Patrol, awesome. Today when we do our obstacle course in skating, it's going to be Paw Patrol themed. So we're going to try to get to the end of the obstacle course so that we can save, one of the dogs and, choose which character you're going to be. And we're going to, draw some things on the ice and they're all going to be Paw Patrol themed. So, that maybe obstacle course that wasn't really engaging or motivating for some of the participants in that group suddenly are like, oh, you know, it's something that I love. It's something that's important to me as an individual. So that's just a really easy win to begin with. It's something that some way that you can kind of get buy-in from a group or from an individual when previously that activity really wasn't getting their buy-in. Another one is to just be really silly and energetic. You know, kids at Canucks Autism Network often come up to me and they're like, Hallie, you're so weird. And I'm like, yeah, I know, because I do it purposely, because it's engaging and it's fun and it's silly and it makes the day more exciting. You know, if you have a recreation instructor who shows up and they're very serious about what needs to be done, and you know, they show up with a very serious face, probably that's the energy that they're going to be getting back from the group. The last one here, and it's one that we often sort of forget about, is the using praise. And at Canucks Autism Network, we really try to encourage recreation instructors to use behavior-specific praise. So really finding those moments when the participants in the group are really showing positive behavior. They're really, you know, they're trying their best, or they helped out a teammate, or they tried something new that was kind of scary. Those are the moments that we really want to encourage, right? Those are the moments we really want to recognize and say, hey, I see you. I see the effort. I see that really awesome thing that you just did. To recognize it and to provide some really sort of tangible recognition, or, you know, praise, social cheering, high fives, whatever it is. The more that we can sort of recognize those moments, point it out when kids are doing really well, the more those things are going to happen again in the future. So that's a huge one that we really encourage. I think often we kind of fall into a trap of waiting for the moments when, you know, someone's being a little disruptive or causing some trouble or using some behaviors that aren't exactly desirable in that program space. We wait for those moments and then we kind of wag our finger. We have, you know, those are the moments we pay attention to. And we really want to encourage recreation instructors to try to put their attention as much as possible on those moments of positive behavior and really, really recognize them, and point out how awesome they are, because the other participants in the group are going to see that and they're going to see, wow, that seems to be a really great way of getting attention, and getting praise and getting recognized from my friends, my peers as well. So I tend to be someone who asks a lot about if anyone has any questions. So if anyone has any questions, why don't I just ask you to type them in the chat box and we can kind of cover them as we go along. I know we're supposed to save that for the end, but all right. Another one when it comes to motivation that seems kind of obvious but is not often something that's part of our practice is to really give as many choices as possible. So we find that, and research shows that when someone is just told to do something, they're not given a choice, they're told what they need to do, that they are actually much less likely to be engaged or, you know, want to do that task than if they're given two closed choice options. So this is something that we can really use super, super easily within our programs, that we can really encourage recreation instructors to do, is to just provide two closed choices that they are willing to provide, that are easy to provide. So we can, even when our day feels very prescribed, like we have certain things we need to accomplish, we can still use choices within those activities. So we might say something like, you know, let's say we're in a swim program and we need to practice back floats, bubbles, and front floats on the first day. We know that. Those are three things that we definitely need to do. So maybe the first choice that we're going to offer is we're going to say, as a group, what would you like to start with? Would you like to start with front floats or back floats? So we're giving them two closed choices. We're not saying, hey, what would you like to do today? Because they're probably going to say, go home and, you know, play video games instead of swimming. But if we give them two closed constrained choices that we can reasonably provide, then that's really going to increase their agency and motivation to participate. So instead of it being something that you chose and that they now have to do or are compelled to do, this is something that they have had a choice in, they've decided what they want to do, and now they can get engaged in it. So again, this is just a really, really simple thing that we can do. Even within an activity that's already decided, so let's say we know we're doing front floats, we ask them maybe, do you want to do your front float 6 times or 5 times? You know, should we practice it for 4 minutes or 3 minutes? Do you want help or do you want to do it on your own? You know, do you want to do it on this side of the pool or that side of the pool? Or with this partner or that partner? So again, the choices are limited, I would say, only by your imagination. There's, you know, almost infinite choices you can provide, even within an activity that feels really prescribed. And it's a really, really simple way that we can really help participants to feel empowered, to feel that they are active agents in the program and not just sort of passive participants who are following our direction. The next one is to think about what is motivating for that group. So, you know, this, I think often people feel that this is contrived to provide sort of an extrinsic motivation for doing a task. But really, this is something that we all do very naturally in our lives. This is something that we kind of all follow very naturally in our lives. You know, we go to work, we get paid, maybe we have a really hard day at work, and then we go enjoy some sunshine after. Or, you know, we tell ourselves, first you take out the garbage, and then you can have some ice cream. So this is a really natural thing that we all do in our lives, is we kind of set ourselves up that when we do something really hard, we try to plan that something motivating is going to come after. And this is something that we can really easily encourage recreation instructors to implement in their own programs, to simply think about building in first then language into their program on a very consistent basis. So that kind of has 2 wins. And one of them is that it helps the recreation instructors to plan their lessons so that we're not always going to start out the lesson really easy and make it get harder and harder and harder throughout the lesson. We find that when we do that, that's often when we see a lot of challenging behavior happening, because kids start off feeling really great and then they begin feeling frustrated and things feel more challenging and the day gets more difficult, and then we see some sort of challenging behavior. So the first win is that it really helps instructors to set up the day so that they're alternating hard activity, sort of something more fun or something a little easier, more preferred. And then the second win is that it's really going to support the participants in the group to feel motivated to do things that maybe are kind of hard, challenging, or effortful, or non-preferred. So again, we can do this really easily. We can say things like, you know, first in skating, you're going to practice scraping your skate on the ice. And then after that, we're going to do a fun obstacle course. And then maybe in the obstacle course, we're really practicing that skill that we just learned, but in a more sort of fun and engaging way. You know, even just saying things like, hey, first we're going to do the running and stretching, because that's not something that kids are typically super motivated by, you know, and then we're going to do a fun warm-up activity after that. You know, or first we need to tidy up all the toys, all the activities, you know, equipment that we've been using, and then we're going to have a fun game together as a group. Or even things like, first we'll wash our hands and then we'll get our snack. Or first we line up and go to the bathroom and then we come back and we eat our lunch. So again, this is a really simple thing that instructors can add into their programs that we find has a really huge effect on the behavior of the group as a whole. So it really sets up the group to feel motivated for when they do something that is non-preferred or difficult, that something kind of fun is coming after, or something more rewarding is coming after for them. So I already kind of mentioned this, but really important that instructors also are paying attention to that really positive behavior, that they are noticing it, they're trying to find those moments where they can really identify things that are going really well, with behavior-specific language. So really letting the kids know, I love how you lined up with your hands at your sides. Everyone was quiet. Your eyes were on me. That was amazing. Or, you know, Sally, that was really awesome. I saw how you helped up your friend when he fell down. Like, that was amazing. Great being a good friend. So the more we can talk about what the behaviors were that were awesome, and the more we can recognize those behaviors, the more kids are going to realize those behaviors are really working for them, you know, to be recognized and to get that social praise and social feedback. All right, moving on to our last couple of concepts here. Point system. Point systems are awesome. It is just about kind of what we just talked about. It's about recognizing that positive behavior and then giving something tangible for the behavior that is going to work towards something that that group or individual really wants. So this can look like a token board, as you can see on the slide here. It can also look like tallies. It can look like stars. It can be check marks. It can be done on a piece of paper, on a whiteboard. We really like to encourage instructors that this doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be something where you have laminated beautiful visuals and you have, you know, Velcro them all and it's really fancy. As long as the concept is in place that the group is having their behavior, positive behavior, really recognized, and they're earning something that matters to them. If that concept is in place, then this strategy is going to be really successful. So I've seen this implemented in tons of different situations. I worked with an individual on ICE who was getting tokens just like this on a token board for trying his best, for trying new things that are really difficult, for helping a friend, for even giving high fives or listening to his coach, and earning, you know, blowing bubbles for 30 seconds at the end. It can also be used with a group. It can be really effective. So you can start the lesson, instructor can start the lesson by telling the group, hey, today we're going to earn, you know, 10 tally marks for things like trying our best, listening to the coach, being a good friend, helping our teammates. And you know, if we can do all those things, then at the end of the lesson, you get to choose a special game that you want to do, and maybe you give them 3 closed choices of games they can choose. And you play that game for 5 minutes. Sometimes we do like a song or a dance party they want to work for, bubbles, or I don't know. Sometimes even having the instructor do something really silly, like, hey, do you want to work for the instructor trying to, I don't know, like floss or do a silly dance move at the end? A lot of kids are really motivated by that. Again, can really change the whole dynamic of a group, just letting everyone know your positive behavior is being recognized and you're working towards something that you want for it is really, really powerful. So visual supports are great. We have them on our website if it's something that you feel you're interested in and you don't have access to in another place in your personal or professional life. So we have, you know, countdown strips, choice boards, token board, first then. And yeah, again, I should have taken a screenshot of where all those things were, but they are all available on the website under recreation for free. Okay, any questions or comments? Okay, thank you very much. If you do have any questions or comments, feel free to type them in the comment box below. The next section that we're going to chat about is about enhancing communication. And again, because we have only an hour together, these strategies are really condensed into just a couple of key points. But again, these are things that we expand upon in other trainings we do. And if you have instructors that are looking for a little more support, we can certainly connect. So enhancing communication. The idea is that verbal communication it works for maybe 80% of learners. There's a big proportion of the population that really does take in verbal information really well and is able to sort of incorporate that and plan motor movements, you know, plan long series of steps based on those things. However, there is also a big proportion of the population that doesn't do as well with verbal communication and prefers other ways of receiving communication. So the idea is that verbal communication, we say it, it's very transient. As soon as we say the words, they're gone. It's not very concrete and it's not very tangible. So the idea with sort of enhancing communication is that we are not just using verbal communication. So we'll go through a couple of strategies that can help individuals who maybe benefit from having sort of more tangible ways of communicating. So the first one is to remember that if you are using verbal communication for instructions in recreation, so you want to tell someone, you know, this is the obstacle course, first we're going to do this and we're going to do that. Or you want to teach them, you know, we're going to do a squat today and this is how you do it. It's really important to remember that if we are using verbal communication and we want to make it accessible to a whole group, it's going to be more accessible if we use less words and if we're able to be more concise. So one way of reminding ourselves to do that is to use the rule of 3, which is to give no more than 3 instructions at a time. So there's a lot of research that shows that even neurotypical adults actually do best with 3 or less instructions at a time. So then if we're thinking of working with young children, or we're thinking of people who working with people who maybe have differences in processing, differences in attention, you know, even differences in short-term memory, then some of those individuals might even benefit from having 1 piece of information at a time. So keep that rule of 3. So 3 or less steps at a time. It might look something like teaching a squat. You might say legs shoulder width apart, and then you wait for them to do it. Awesome, you got it. Okay, bend your knees. Perfect. And arms out. Nailed it. And stand up. That's a squat. So with that, although we gave 4 instructions, we only gave 1 at a time. So we gave an instruction and then we wait for the group to do it. Give another instruction, wait for the group to do it. The other thing is to be really concise. So we could say, you know, today we're going to do a squat, and squats are really great for really strengthening your glute muscles, and, you know, it's going to give you a lot more force when you're working on explosive running. And so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make sure we get our feet wide apart, pretty much as wide as your shoulders. You know, make sure your toes are pointing forward. That's a lot of information. And if we have some individuals in the group who have differences with attention or processing, we're probably going to lose them along the way, and they might not know what we're doing anymore. So instead of that, maybe, you know, what we say is feet shoulder width apart, bend your knees, arms out. Great. So, you know, with that, we use maybe only 10 words. We still get our point completely across, and we can make changes or additions afterward if we need to. So again, really, really key. You know, even this one change in a recreation program by the instructor or the coach really can improve outcomes for some of the individuals in the group who have some differences with these things. The second one is to give time. So some participants might require extra time for processing or extra time to process and then put that processing into actual motor movements. So sometimes an instructor will give an instruction to the group, and they'll notice that sort of one individual hasn't started. And their reaction might be that this person is being non-compliant or difficult or doesn't want to do the activity. When really that person might just need a little extra time to process that instruction. So we really recommend that if a participant doesn't respond immediately, it's a really good rule of thumb to try to count to 5 in your head before you repeat that instruction. Or some individuals have told us that repeating it right away is like piling layers of information on top of each other before that person has had time to process the first one. So count to 5. We ask them count to 5 in your head. And then after counting to 5, then you can repeat the instruction or try rephrasing. Maybe that person just didn't understand what you said or didn't catch the end of it. So we can try breaking that skill into smaller chunks. So maybe if what we've said is, okay, you know, we're all going to stand up and line up and get started for our obstacle course. Maybe when we're chunking it, what we say is, okay, time to stand up. Awesome. Okay, we're going to go line up on the line. And maybe that's a way to get them started with that activity, is to provide a few key first instructions that they need to do in order to get started. So the next one is show and say, and this is a really great way of supporting verbal information. This is something that we really suggest across the board, is that anytime we're providing verbal information, that we sort of keep in mind that it may not be the best form of communication for everyone, and that when we are using verbal information, that we support it with something else. So something, we call it show and say, and the show part can really be anything that is sort of concrete and tangible and isn't going to just be transient and disappear as we say words. So it could be modeling with your body, like in this picture here. So instead of just saying, you know, you're going to bend one knee and lean to the side, she's really showing him what it looks like. And this may sound obvious, but it's not something that we always do. There are some skills that lend themselves really well to doing this, and there are some skills where we really need to be intentional about teaching it while showing what it looks like with our body. So modeling is a great one. Another great one is using visual supports. So sometimes, especially for providing like a series of things that someone needs to do, it may be hard for them to hold in their memory all of the steps that need to be accomplished. So a visual support could be something where we're using pick symbols to represent the different skills that they're going to do in which order. It could be, it could be something as simple as like a checklist or a diagram of where they need to go. You know, even like a map. We can provide text, especially if we're working with someone who has strong reading ability. Again, something like a checklist, a series of instructions, you know, anything that is going to be concrete and it's going to represent what we're saying in a way that they can refer back to after. It's a static document they can continue to use. Then that's really going to support them to reduce their reliance on coming back to us and getting a reminder for what it is they need to be doing. The recreation instructor instead can give them the text, give them a checklist, whatever it is they need to do, and send them out. And then that learner can be independent. They don't need to rely on having constant reminders. Another one is photos. We can use photos to show what a skill will look like, especially if it's hard for us to model it. Video is another good one. We can show, you know, we have a whole bunch of video series on our website that show a lot of skills in recreation programs, things like moves you would do in gymnastics, what certain swimming skills look like. And again, this is sometimes seeing it in a really concrete way is going to be a lot more effective for individuals than just hearing verbally what it is they're expected to do. So that is just a very brief summary of a lot of the strategies that we teach in sort of longer workshops. So again, a summary there. For communication tips, we're really just thinking about limiting verbal communication, keeping it really concise, providing only 3 pieces of information at a time, allowing the participants some time to process the information and potentially chunking it into smaller pieces if they're having trouble processing it. And then the third one is to really show and say, to support verbal information with other more concrete forms of communication, like modeling with our body, using visual supports, using text, checklists, video, pictures, things like that. So again, I will just ask if anyone has any questions. Feel free, if you do, to type them in the box and we can address them as we go along. Or we can always save other comments until the end where you can sort of unmute yourselves and we can have a bit more of a discussion. All right. So the next section is on, this is our last section on strategies, increasing predictability and structure. So predictability is the concept of having information about what's going to happen for you. And this is something that we all really benefit from in our lives. There's certain individuals in programs that we have who may benefit way more from having these kind of supports in place. It's really going to help them to feel comfortable in the program, to know what to expect, and to reduce their anxiety about things that are going to happen and what maybe the expectations are for them. So there's a few different ways that we can do this. So we'll go through them sort of one at a time. The first one is to front load information about what is going to happen in the program. Again, when we go, we do, I think we do, about 120 workshops a year. Most of them are for the majority of them are for recreation providers. I would say, close to 60-70% of recreation instructors will say that they are not using any form of schedule, checklist, or visual schedule for their lesson, at the time that we provide the workshop. And it's something that they often say at the end of the workshop is something that they can really implement right away, something that's going to sort of change the structure of the workshop, of their programs. So front loading, there's a lot of ways that we can do it, but the idea basically is that the more information we have about what's going to happen for us in our lives, the more safe, comfortable we feel, the more ready we feel to participate. So we do this all the time in our personal lives. If we're going on holiday, the first thing we do is we go, look up information about the city. We go look up information about the hotel. We're doing a new activity. We try to learn as much as possible what that activity is going to be like. We look at videos of that activity. We, go online. We find people's stories, read blogs. So it's something that we do as adults for ourselves all the time, but it's not always something that we put in place for our participants. There's lots of ways we can do it though, and it's really easy to do. So some coaches will tell you, but I have back-to-back lessons and there's just no time to do something like this. Like there's just no time to put a schedule into place. But you ask them like, well, do you know, did you know what your plan was kind of for the day? Like what things you were going to do? So they're like, oh yeah, for sure. Okay, so just take 30 seconds, maybe even less than 30 seconds, and just take a piece of paper and just jot down really quickly the things that you're going to do in order. Show it to the group at the beginning of the lesson, and it can be as easy as that. This is something that we really find supports positive behavior in groups, that when we have structure and we have predictability, the group feels more comfortable with the day. They feel that there's a plan, they feel that there's structure. We find in unstructured time, that is often where a lot of the challenging behavior sort of ends up happening. So we can use a visual schedule like the one that's here. We have a team schedule. Again, this one's really fancy. It looks really beautiful. Doesn't have to be like that at all. Even in first responder workshops, this is something that we really encourage, like firefighters or police to do on the scene, and we get them to practice drawing stick people, stick helicopters. And, the art doesn't have to be beautiful. It doesn't have to be perfect in order to get the point across. So again, it can be stick people on a piece of paper. If you want to have something fancy, like this schedule here in the slides, then awesome. That works too. So another thing we can do is just make a checklist. This is great, especially for working with kind of older participants. We often use this in swim programs when we're expecting someone to do, you're going to do 5 laps of the pool doing your front crawl, and then we're going to practice your backstroke. And, there's infinite things you can do with a checklist, but we find that the engagement is much higher when we have sort of a plan in place. This person goes through the checklist and they're like, oh, I can see myself moving through this lesson. I can, feel self-efficacy for checking things off. I don't know about you, but I'm someone who really, really functions well with checklists. It's something that I use all the time in my life, and I really feel that self-efficacy when I use a checklist. And I know many of our participants benefit from having something like that in programs as well. Another fun story, we actually had in one of our programs an individual who showed up to a skating lesson, and he was like, I hate skating. This is so stupid and pointless, and I don't want to be here. These lessons are for babies. And so we went home that night and we kind of thought about how can we motivate him to feel like this is something that's important for him. Like what does he like? What can he get out of it? And we came back and we were like, you know what? You love hockey and this is why you're at skating lessons. And the NHL players who are, currently in the league, they need to have a whole training plan in place in order to be successful and to really hone their skills. So we made him like an advanced checklist that was like a training schedule, for the NHL in the skating program. And he completely changed his behavior. So he went from, feeling really unmotivated, being really kind of disruptive, using some challenging behavior, saying some things that were kind of offensive, to like literally flying through the whole lesson, checking things off, feeling so proud, like literally like flexing. And completely changed the experience for him, even though he was doing exactly the same skills as everyone else that was in that program. It was kind of an added support that we could give him that really helped him to feel like the lesson was something that mattered to him. So yeah, front loading, giving lots of support, reducing anxiety, providing lots of structure. Lots of different ways we can do this. First then is a really simple way. It's just a 2-part visual schedule that shows, first we're doing the hard thing, then a fun thing's coming. We can make beautiful visuals like this one in the middle. Again, we have those all on our website for free if you want to print them off and laminate them, make them fancy, or you can draw them yourself. And then here on the right-hand side, we have kind of a checklist that has some pictures beside that's really showing a new activity. This hockey team was going off-site to Rogers Arena, which is like our big NHL stadium, and they had never done this experience before, so this was something that was really supportive for them. Having photos of each step, what it was going to look like, and really having a lot of written information about what each step was going to be. One of the last things is transition warnings. So when things change really suddenly, so this is a form of front loading as well. Essentially, we're front loading people that an activity is going to change. So when things change really suddenly, sometimes it can really throw us off, especially in 2 particular situations. And one is when we're doing something that we really, really like and we don't want it to end. Then, I don't know if you ever tried to take an iPad away from a kid or something, but you don't just go in hot, right? You don't just go in and grab it away. You need to let them know, okay, you have 5 minutes left, okay, 2 minutes left, 1 minute, awesome, we're gonna have a 10-second countdown. And another situation that front loading is really helpful is when we're doing something that is really non-preferred and difficult and it feels like it's going on for a really long time. It can be really helpful for us to know, hey, you know what? This is hard. You have only 5 minutes left and keep pushing. You can do it. Hey, only 2 minutes. Wow, look how well you're doing. This is awesome. You're going to make it to the end. Front loading in those 2 situations, again, it really, really helps increase positive behavior if we can do those couple of simple things. So, letting kids know that a new activity is coming in those 2 situations, really, really helpful. So some examples, 1 minute left in kicking, you can do it, you got this, and then we have a special activity. You have 10 seconds left to score a goal. Okay, 3, 2, 1, game's over, team meeting, awesome. Or 2 minutes until home time today. Maybe that's because kids are really struggling with the lesson, or maybe it's because kids are really loving the lesson and they're not going to want to go home after. And the last one is to front load our expectations. So when we have a group with us for 6 or 8 weeks, we have a recreation instructor who has a group of 10 kids or something with them for a bunch of weeks. It's really great if we can start out those 10 weeks by letting the group know exactly what behavior we expect from them from the whole time we're going to be in that program together. So it's not something we need to sit down and build group rules together every single week. Maybe the first week we sit down together and we say, hey, we're doing skating together and we have sharp things on our feet and our brains are really important. We're going to be on ice, it's slippery. What are some rules that we should put in place? So if we ask the group, rather than telling them what the rules should be, we ask them, hey, what do you think our rules should be? Let's create these rules together. I want you to create the rules. We tend to get a lot more buy-in. because they're not rules that are coming from you. These are things that the group have created themselves, they feel responsible for. You may even find them policing each other when you have them sort of create the rules themselves. So some examples are, try your best, have a positive attitude, help your teammates, listen to the coach, describing some safety things that are really important. And then after we have those rules, we find that often coaches really kind of pay attention to them the first week, and then they forget about them for the following 5 or 7 weeks. But if we can really refer back to them as often as possible, so really enforcing those moments when kids are following the rules and they're complying, let them know, like, hey, I loved how everyone kept their skates on the ice today. That was so safe. That was really awesome. Or I loved how we tried some new things today and it was so hard, but you were trying your best. That was amazing. The more that we can really recognize compliance with the rules, refer back to them, the more kids are going to be able to comply successfully with these things and know what complying successfully looks like, because they can feel it and they've done it. Some examples, we've made some cool things in our programs. This is just a couple of examples, but contingency maps are great. We find it's a really concrete, tangible way for a lot of individuals to understand what their choices might result in. So we made this one on an app called Poplet. That's P-O-P-P-L-E-T, which I think is just a free app or just a couple dollars. Great, very customizable to whatever you need. But the example here is when I'm at hockey, if I make these desirable choices, then I get to use my stick to play with my friends and have fun. But if I raise my stick and I throw it, then I don't get to use my stick for 2 minutes. So that person can really tangibly see what the outcomes of their behaviors will be. Another one that can be really helpful for front-loading expectations is just showing the group what the behaviors look like and what they don't look like. Might be hard for some people to conceptualize, especially for really new behaviors, for things like, water slides. For me personally, actually seeing these examples and non-examples is really helpful, because I know when I go down a water slide, I'm all arms and legs flailing everywhere. So seeing these is really helpful. Again, there may be some situations that lend themselves really well to using examples and non-examples, and some other situations where modeling might be sufficient, or even providing text of the written rules might be sufficient. But having this as a back pocket strategy can be really helpful, especially for people who are having trouble understanding what the rules are, or don't seem to be following them. Then we can provide some more support before we decide whether it's that they don't understand the rules, or if it maybe is non-compliance and needs some motivation to follow those rules. So again, predictability and structure is super important. We find that the more front loading we can do, so the more we can give people information about what's going to happen, the less anxious they're going to be, and the more positive behavior we see in programs. So we can front load the schedule, really let participants know what's going to happen, provide them transition warnings when activities are going to be changing, front load new activities when we're going to be doing new things. And definitely front load our expectations at the beginning of a program and refer back to those expectations, especially compliance with the expectations, as often as we can. So I'm noticing we have about 5 minutes left here, so I just want to quickly point you towards the resources that I've been mentioning on our website. We have a whole bunch of tip sheets that we created in combination with an awesome organization called Via Sport. They are tip sheets for recreation instructors that are working with individuals with autism, and there is everything from important questions to ask parents about how can I best support your child, to motivation strategies for working with individuals with autism in the program. So if you are working with recreation instructors and you want to provide them with a little more supportive sort of materials for their programs, these 10 tip sheets can be a really great way of getting some important information across when you don't necessarily have an hour for them to do a webinar. The visual supports that I talked about are available on the website if you access canucksautism.ca, and then you select training and awareness, and under recreation, we have all the visual supports I mentioned here. We have an online module, and we have lots of other video resources that are free to use, accessible to anyone. If you just would like some consultation or you like some support or you have, I don't know, a question or a comment, feel free to contact us at any time. Our general email is info@canucksautism.ca, and the training email is training@canucksautism.ca, which will reach me. Okay, so I think, yes, we should leave some time for questions. So I'm going to just say a really big thank you, because the more that we invest in building confidence and skills in recreation instructors, the more we're really creating capacity for individuals with autism to feel included, supported, welcome in their community spaces. So thank you so much for